Mother's Day, brand new church. Let's give it up for all of our moms here worshiping with us. And if you're a mom, you can clap for your mom. Yes, I love it. So glad that you're here, and I hope that you are ready to have a little bit of fun as we talk Mother's Day and have a little bit of fun as we're in week number 3 of the series that I've entitled By Design. If you have a copy of God's Word, I encourage you, you can turn to Proverbs Chapter 14. We're going to be in verse number 1, and we're just going to talk all about moms. If you know the series that we're in, we're talking about building, and I'm going to read that verse to you here in just a second, but I want to introduce these mothers up here on our panel: Cindy Dickey, Kristen Reese, also I usually call her Sarah Jessica Parker, but either way, and Megan Malott, Stacy Hilligoss. Let's give these ladies a round of applause up here. Their biggest concern was, Shannon, you're going to take all of our time, and so I'm going to try to narrow it down. But let's look real quick at Proverbs chapter 14, verse number 1. I will say this, that the majority of what I'm going to share is stuff that my wife is sharing at our other campuses, and I just took her notes and want to inspire you, but I really want moms to be the voice for our time together. Look at Proverbs 14, verse number 1 says this. It says, a wise woman builds her home. And that's what this series is all about, is building, designing. God's given us clarity, given us structure, is telling us how we can make things well in every area of our life. We talked about the plumb line week number 1. Chad did an amazing job talking about in week number 2, dealing with the beautiful picture of the church, and that being the people within the church. And we're going to talk a little bit about moms building their home. A wise woman builds her home, and then it says this, but a foolish woman tears it down, and look at this, with her own hands. With her own hands. Basically, here's what God's telling us. You have the opportunity to design your home or be a part of the demolition process of your home. The atmosphere, the structure, the influence happens with mom. Dads, I know you want to say it's you. I know you want to take a little bit of the credit. The reality is this: God took care of making the best on the second. And when he made woman, he made atmosphere, he made beauty, he made things right, and we all know it, men. And if you do know it, say amen. We know it. And the atmosphere of the home, that structure, is found from mom. It's found from the influence of a woman in your house. And I'm going to give you a few points, I think, that will assist you in a few moments of how to build your home. Matter of fact, I have 7. Actually, I've got 8. And the ladies were looking through my notes earlier going, there's no way you're going to finish those. Here's the thing. I don't have 3 services here. I have plenty of time. And the food truck can just make a little more food for us. But we're going to walk through this. But I want to just talk a little bit to you moms and really answer a few questions that I think are going to help. Because I don't know if you know this, I've never been a mother. I'm also not a biologist, but that's a whole nother issue. I just want you to know that it's so powerful to see the impact of a mom. But I want to ask you, how would you say, Cindy, if you were to say in a nutshell, how does a mom, how does a woman even, or a wannabe mom, or maybe an expecting mom, you may know one of those, that how do they build their home? What's the practical things that you would throw out there?
I've really been thinking about this question. It's been, I think, a hard one for me because I didn't used to be very good at this, but...
I didn't say, how do you buy a home?
That's right. Yeah. I can do that for you too, though.
Stay focused.
But I think that you have to remember who you serve and where your worth is. So, and what order you serve in. So I serve God first. That's who comes first in my home and in my life. And second is my husband, and then my children and my work. And there's, an order to things. So when you get that order correct, I think that's what builds your home. Good. And my husband told me not to say this. Oh, he just walked in the door so he can hear it.
Oh, I'm glad you're here, Matt.
So
welcome. Your wife's
and
preaching.
I really want to say, don't make stupid choices. That's really, because when I've always, in those moments where I've torn my home down, it's because I've made a stupid choice or been in a situation that I shouldn't have been in, or somewhere that was the wrong place for me.
That is so good. And you gave the structure perfect. God, and then your husband, and then you underneath that, and then with the kids and vocation and so forth and so on.
Right, and it's a respect. If you show your husband respect and allow him to lead your home, that's what really builds your home.
That's so good. I actually have that in my notes. And I'm going to go ahead and throw that verse up there because I think it's so important that people understand. Actually, just read all of Ephesians 5. Okay. And I want to throw this at you, and I love the fact, Kristen, that you're influencing literally hundreds of kids every month, inspiring them, and then you have amazing kids of your own that we do give Coach a little credit for, not much, but how would you say on the opposite end of building a home, what would be maybe one thing you would say is a foolish decision that would tear a home down?
I think it's comparison, like comparing your family to somebody
Say
else.
that again. Say it again.
Comparison.
Comparison.
Social media makes that super easy now. You see everything that everybody else does, and you're like, oh, I wish my family could do that, but your family is your family.
Would you say comparison, and again, I've told these ladies this is going to get, I gave them questions, that ain't going to happen. I'm just saying, we're going to ramble a little bit. But what would you say for a mom in the 21st century today is the biggest point of comparison? Is it kids' clothes? Is it where they go? Is it looks? What would you say is the biggest potential pothole to dodge? Is it all of them?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
it's
my
all
kids
of
are little, and I see all of that, like with their friends, with their friends' moms post, because that's what I see. My kids are young enough, they don't have social media. So I see what my friends post about their kids.
Wow. So I know, Megan, this is out of order, but I'm just going to throw it out here because you knew I wasn't going to do anything I said. But social media, seriously. I mean, you do great on social media. I love celebrating your family. And what's the balance? How do you keep that balance? Not for your kids' management time. We might get into that as well. But as a young mom with a beautiful family, how do you handle all that?
I think if you don't have intentional balance, it's going to take all of your time. You could be on social media for hours. So I physically have a time limit on my phone for myself. You can go into your screen time, you click social media. All my social medias are under a time limit because your kids follow your example and they're mirror images of us. So if I want them to manage their time well on their phone, I have to lead by example. So I have time limits on their phone. I have a time limit on my own phone for my social media. And sometimes when I run out, I hit ignore and give myself more time and justify it. But for the most part, I hold myself to a limit.
So you can literally go into settings and set your screen time categorically. Unless you have a Droid. They probably don't have that for
I have
Droid
no
users.
other limits on my phone other than my social media has a time limit and it times out.
That's so good. Yeah, I get my weekly update at 9 o'clock on Sunday. So while I'm doing mic check, Doug hears this a lot. I'm like, I'm down 9%, which is rare, by the way. But that is so good. And I know that piece of the puzzle, at least in the world that I'm in, is the one that is probably the biggest pothole that I'm seeing people trip up on. Not just wanting their endorphins and all the hits, but they're also battling, catching up, and we don't want to necessarily get into those pieces of the puzzle. What would you say, Stacy, is a category, comparison, Kristen said, what would you say is a way that is a foolish decision that tears your home down?
Well, I can speak from experience being divorced. I was married the first time for 9 years. I had 2 precious babies. I did things differently the second time. And Cindy touched on this, and I've prayed about these questions a lot.
It's fine. Take all the time you need.
All I can say is that the first time, everything was out of order. My children were always first. They came before God because at that time, I ran from about 18 to 28, and I was out of church. I wasn't doing things the way I was supposed to.
Whoa.
But my kids came first. I loved them, of course, unconditionally, just like most mothers do, I should say. But I wasn't good to my husband in the sense that I did not put him above my kids. That's different now. I'm not saying I don't love my kids with every ounce of my soul, because I do. But my husband comes before them. I intentionally prioritize time with him. We were able to, since we were blended, we were able to have date night where I never had that before the first time, because, you've got to shove your kids off. You go to work, and then you come home and you feel guilty about having a date night when you've been working all day and your kids were at the babysitter or school or wherever they were. So it's just different. It's totally different, but it's the most important thing is to put God first, to put your spouse second, and then to put your kids third. And that is hard. It's very, very hard to do, and I bombed the first time. But I do think it's something that I'm much more successful at the second go around.
That's awesome. You know what I love too, and I'm going to interject on Stacy's story, because we've been seeing this story at least together as families for 16 years. And I remember through the hurdles, and then even seeing some of her, seeing her ex and Jason's, and watching them transition their kids in the lobby of the church and all hugging each other and desiring to do it right. And I absolutely love that. I tell that story a lot. So what would you say, Megan, besides the fact that I'm totally off here again? What would you say? So we touched on blended a little bit, and we're talking about, I know step's not the word anymore, and we're talking stay at home, and we're talking shark moms, and we're talking single, some that are battling or have been at a point where they were single moms. What would you say in your life now and in the past few years, what do you think you've done well?
I think, like they've all touched on it, the only way to build your home is to have a good foundation. So Christ should be at the foundation of that, no matter what season you're in. So as a single, like, this isn't just a sermon for moms. Like, the habits you're building right now are going to carry with you into motherhood. So if you're losing your temper now and allowing that to be okay, if you are saying words you shouldn't be saying, if you're not having a quiet time, all of that's going to follow you into motherhood. So you have to be building strong habits as a single to be a good mother someday. And then as a single mom, I really just desired to have a partner. And I remember the day that I was sitting on my floor praying and just said, God, I'm letting go of that. If I'm single for the rest of my life and that's your will, I have a daughter to raise, and I'll do it to the best of my ability to your glory without a partner. And he just took that weight from me, and everything changed at that point. And it's because I was seeking him first and realized that he is your bridegroom. He is your person. He's a wonderful counselor, a good partner, and I could turn to him if I was struggling with my kids. I didn't need an earthly partner. And when I let him be that, that made being a single mom so much easier. And then I met Jaden pretty quickly after that season where I had just turned it over to him. I think if he sees you putting him first, he'll give you the desires of your heart. But so you have to genuinely put him first.
So good.
And then as a mom, I think what you asked what I did well, I think this is what I messed up, was that once you get married, you are still to build your home on the foundation of Christ with or without your husband. In the sense, if he's not going to church, you can still take your children to church. If he's not praying with your kids, you can still pray over your kids. You don't have to wait on him, because I think when we stand in front of God someday, we're going to be judged individually, not as two people. And you still have to have your relationship with Christ, even if your husband isn't feeding your relationship with Christ.
Good night. Somebody preaching up here. How about these ladies? It's so good. And I love that I'm old now and was able to see that journey and watch you and the White John Legend get together, and just such a neat story. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Coach met Kristen. I'm that old. And and I will say this, as an old person, what Cindy said something that was so good that really dovetails into what you said, Megan, and that is this. Cindy said, it's funny that a lot of my 50-something friends, now that they're kids, they're empty nesters, aren't finishing strong in service to the local church. It's like, oh, we did our deal, and now we're not accountable to our, we were accountable to our kids wondering if we were going to church. And that was something that Cindy had interjected in that, and that we finished strong. And I thought that was a really great point. Kristen, you're with kids. You see moms. You see kids that have different influences within homes. Give me one thing you think moms are doing well in this culture, and one thing that you think, man, we gotta ratchet that up a little bit. She already knew we're not going on this list. Something moms are doing well. Getting kids to church, we know that is definitely one.
Yeah, I think for my mom friends, it's like we have a community together. Like we're raising our kids
Strong
together.
relationships.
Strong relationships. Like Megan's helped me pick up my kids. Cindy's at it. Plenty of people in this
That is
audience
so good.
have babysat my kids when I've needed them. And I think that like having a strong like friendship relationship is something that we do well as a church, especially.
And you're finding that because you're at church. Not only, there's friends outside of church,
Right,
but the majority of it is found
The
because
majority of my friends, like my mom friends that I rely on, go to this church. And it came from plugging in and serving and meeting those people here.
Here we go. Somebody preaching without me preaching right here. Plugging in, serving, even on Wednesday. Really? You come on Wednesday too?
Just a little bit.
Just a little
sometimes.
bit? Wow, that is amazing.
Maybe on every other day. Yeah. Yesterday.
And don't you love what Kristen does in our B&K area? Isn't she amazing? I absolutely love it. She texted me a couple of Sundays ago and said, Coach just preached to 54 kids in our big room, and just seeing what God's doing there is fantastic. And you would say one thing that you're seeing, again, you're seeing a wide range that maybe moms could ratchet up a little bit or make better.
To me, it would be like prioritizing your time at church. Like through the week, things get hectic and sports come involved. And
Wow.
Put church first. Wednesday nights are Wednesday nights where we come to church. That's what we do at our family. If we have practice, we don't go on Wednesday nights. So make sure that, getting your kids here is something that you prioritize in your family.
Golly, that's so good. I was sitting in my quiet time this morning, and literally I was thanking God that my mom did whatever it took. Dad was not a Christ follower. He wasn't even saved till he was 39 years old and baptized at 39. But my mom did whatever it took. And then eventually she said, I'm going. And she picked us up and took us. And it was just a few weeks after that I prayed to receive Christ. My sister prayed to receive Christ because a mom cared. And just that truth is it. That truth is so powerful. The church is the hope of the world. Okay, let's flip the script a little, Cindy, and talk about this. You've got Matt at home. We all know Matt looks delicious. We also know
It's
that
true. It's very
you've
true.
got work, and you're running in the sense of, you're dealing with millions of dollars. You're moving homes. You're taking phone calls. You've got grandbabies. You've got beautiful kids. I don't use the word balance, but I'm using it metaphorically just for the sake. I use the word rhythm. How would you say that you most successfully find balance where you can still have a quiet time, meet the needs that are found there of honoring your husband, your kids, your grandkids, and also being successful in your business?
I think you have to be present and intentional. Those are two
Whoa.
words that came to
Wait,
me.
say that again.
Be present and be intentional. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. I'm present. I'm intentional.
So good.
When I'm with Matt, he might disagree with this occasionally because there are times that he does tell me,
We
please
can
put
bring
your
him up
phone
here.
down. He would kill me if you brought him up here. I think he's like going out the door. But, when I'm with him, I try to be intentional. There are times that he's talking to me and I'm like, what did you just say? I didn't hear one word of that. And he's like, yeah, I know. But, and it's the same, when I'm with my kids. I've got great kids. I have beautiful grandchildren and a grandson on the way. it's just being present where you are and being intentional with your words and your listening. Being present with your listening is a big deal, and intentional in what you hear.
And Stacy, you in that same world, and I saw the other day celebrating with you 25 years in the corporate world. You've got kids all over the place, and cheerleaders and track stars and basketball players. And what is and again, I'm not a balanced guy, but just for the sake of understanding, how do we do it? How do you do it?
Well, I'm not trying to just stab myself and say that I'm terrible at everything, but this is something I was not very good at for a long time. And I mean that because I worked a lot of hours. But one thing I did do right is my kids know, you can ask any one of them, that we prioritize them and their things. Whatever they're involved in, there may be an occasional thing that Jason or I miss, but I would say 99% of their stuff we're present for. That's just who we are. That's what we do. So I would say that's one thing I've done good as far as juggling a career and children. But just to elaborate a little bit on that, there's a couple of things that I know that I would change. If I could go back in time and change some things, I would probably be more present at home, and I wouldn't maybe work as much. COVID's changed all that. I work from home the majority of the time now, so I'm home anytime they want to see me. Of course, they're older now, but they can come down into my office and we can have a discussion or just kind of check in with each other. So things are different, but that was a struggle.
Both of you said present, and again, I know I'm doing a part B here, Stacy. Let's say your kids are young and you're wanting to start this, like you've got time. And what I mean by young is, where you can have conversation. What would be a present moment right now, like where my kids know I'm present?
Well, I think putting the phone down is important, but I also think that getting everyone together, whether it's for a meal or whether you're watching a TV show together or just intentionally being present with your family, that is something that even today our kids typically will go to their room and do whatever they want. They may be playing video games or we're just not present like we should be. And of course, I only have 2 kids home now. The other 2 are in college. Well, one's out of college, one's in college, so she's not home. But with the 2 that are left, they're older now, and we're not cool. It's not super
You're cool,
fun.
Stacey.
I know I'm cool, but Jason's not.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's not so fun to go shoot hoops with Dad anymore because
he'll beat him.
Well,
Jason will beat him, and he knows it.
There's always the risk that you're going to get embarrassed by Dad. So I think that would be a good thing. If I could go back and change just a few things, it would be to definitely have dinner at the table every night.
Wow.
Intentionally have conversations about how your day went and just be more intentional rather than playing video games or in your own room watching your own television show, but everybody to come together.
And that is intentional. You mentioned being intentional and present. So, again, I'm 50. I haven't had kids in my home for a couple of years. It's the greatest day of my life. And but the table, I know in the real estate world, I have friends that dabble in that a little bit, and they're not even building kitchens in homes anymore. Most people don't even use the kitchen. So that table moment is still, would you all say that table moment is still important? Yeah, good.
Also for us, like the car ride home from school is where they just don't stop talking.
So music's off?
Music's off. We talk on the way home. They get in. I don't ask them yes or no questions.
That is so good. Somebody write that down. That is awesome.
I think you've said that multiple times.
I
don't
love
ask them
that.
yes or no questions.
Actually, Cindy said it, but it's good, yes.
What did you do today? What was your favorite part of the day?
We always did best and worst at our house. We would sit around
Love
the table, and my granddaughter does it now. What's the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? You didn't always have to have a worst, but you always had to have a best. And it's very important to listen to your children. Like, no matter how old they are, even if they're little bitty and they're just blabbering on about things that are not important, you don't think. They're very, very important things to them. So if you stop what you're doing and intentionally listen to your children their whole life growing
So
up,
good.
you'll learn, like, I don't know, Drew and Kara always told me things, and some of the things I didn't really want to know. I was like, oh my word, I would have much rather not known that. But I didn't ever say that out loud. I just let them continue to talk, and I was, driving or whatever, and my eyes would be like, oh, mercy. But I was grateful that they took that time to talk to me, and the reason they did that is because they knew that I was going to listen.
So good. Would you want to add anything to that, Megan?
Yeah, so that kind of goes into one of my questions that you asked about how are you intentional with a high schooler and a kindergartner? Because our kids span a wide range. And they all kind of touched on what I had planned to say, and that's you have to be intentional with your time. It's not just going to happen. We've paid attention to when our kids are the most talkative. And with the girls, it's after school. And so that time is kind of set aside for them because they want to talk all about their day. But the boys, it seems to be more at bedtime. And so we make sure to get the kindergartner to bed first. And I try very hard to do that on time so that we can read a book, we can lay, we can talk, and he'll just talk forever. As much as I want to say, okay, it's time to just go to sleep, like close your eyes and be quiet, I try to let him just talk because I hear so much I would have never heard even though I spent the whole day with him. And then once I get him to bed, our high schooler's waiting in my room because he knows that's his time, and we watch TV and we hang out, and he gets to stay up later than everyone else, and we get to have that time with him. So we've just kind of set aside time that they know is theirs.
Yeah, understanding that, y'all said it a lot better than I would, but the door's open, that understanding. And let me just tell you this, and I know that Cindy Dickey knows this, and Stacy knows this, but 216 months goes quick. And those moments that I have with my kids are the moments now that they're coming back and saying, oh, I remember Dad. Oh, I remember Dad. And they're going through those conversations of moments that there was a present moment. I wish I could say I was as intentional as you ladies, but if you want to be a mom someday, if you are a mom, if you're a grandmother with great influence in your kid's life, which all grandmothers have it, I'm saying like extra time, marking down, I love the way you said it, and that is intentional time, but I know when they're going in rhythm as well. And that is so powerful. If you would say, hey, this is something I encourage, and I'm going to throw it back to you again, Megan, is this. I've got a blended home, and obviously we have a multi-parenting situation. How do I balance, again, I'm using that word because I don't know what else to say, where I don't feel like, I've got blood investment here and I've got a marriage certificate investment here. How do I make certain, and I'm not saying you will all the time, but what is the best way to make certain that they feel that they're all mine?
That's a good question. If you look at any step parenting blog or magazine or book, it's all going to be very against loving equally. They all say that you can't love your stepkids and your biological kids equally. You shouldn't shame yourself or shame other moms for not. I can't read any of those things. I love all four of mine equally, and I always have. My stepkids are absolute angels and are such a blessing to raise, and I love them so much. So that's not been my experience. So I asked God to give me an answer so I wouldn't offend stepmoms who struggle with loving their stepkids equally. And what he said to me just wrecked me. I felt like he said, everyone has a seat at the table. And he loves sinners and saved the same. He ate with tax collectors. You may not feel like your stepson's a tax collector, but maybe he takes a lot of your money. You may not feel like your stepdaughter is an adulteress, but maybe she reminds you a lot of your husband's ex-wife or of qualities you don't like.
We are getting way too honest up here, I can tell you right now.
Model. I believe that God told me that you should love them all equally. And
So good.
you're there to wash feet, and you're there to wash laundry, and you're there to be what they need. And if you're a stepmom that does struggle with that, who doesn't feel the same love, all I can say is if they can visibly see that they don't have the same seat at the table, that they are not afforded the same things your biological children are, then you're doing it wrong.
Whoa, that is powerful.
Other people shouldn't be able to see.
Yeah, I'm clapping to that too. That is good.
And I agree
Bounce on that,
completely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, step is a bad word, Shannon. You
I
need
know.
to use bonus.
I said it when I
Bonus.
illustrated it.
They're bonus babies.
Bonus, got it.
And,
okay.
and honestly, I think that's one thing that Jason and I have done really well. When we first got
You
together,
have.
we did. Just touching on discipline, okay? Discipline is totally different based on each kid. And when they're small, you know, it may be one kid you needed to take a basketball away from, or the little Nintendo DS, where another one may need to be spanked. I mean, it's different for each one, and that is a balance. That is something that's difficult, whether you have bonus babies or you've been married to the same person and they're both your children or whatever. But my point in mentioning that is it's a balance, and it's something that you have to learn based on the child. And also, fair is not equal. Fair is not always equal. You may have one kid that needs new tires on their
What?
car. You may have one that
Write that down. That is amazing.
that needs a parking pass
That's
for
my next
college.
book.
Or one needs a prom dress. Maybe
So
one needs
good.
new basketball shoes. They all have different ranges and prices, but it's
Wow.
still, it may not be equal on paper. You may add it up and it may not look the same, but you're still providing the needs of what their needs actually are. And that's just one thing I've always said. If you would get so annoyed if they'd be like, you spent so much on her and you didn't spend this much on me. I'm like, it's not equal.
So good.
And I would intentionally try to, at Christmas time, make sure that the gifts were all the same. But now that they're older, and I've got adult children and then teenagers, one that's graduating next week and one that's a junior will be graduating next year, things are just different.
Yeah.
And equal is not always fair.
That is so good. I just wrote that down. Now, you may not know this, but I am moving into the blended grandparenting. So I am now officially G-Paw, and Cindy is CC. And, of course, we know Anna went into the foster system and then fell in love with her first placement, which we now have named Prosper. And Prosper is adopted. And then in August, we're going to have, I'm calling him Miguel Odell because he's Mexican, but I don't know if you can do that. And my adopted grandson is Prosper. He's El Salvadorian, and so I'm using all these different words that my kids are like, Dad, you are so racist. And I'm learning the balance. I'm 50, all right? I'm learning this stuff. But the hardest part is I want to make sure, and making sure that the seat at the table, even as I believe Maria and Evan are having a grandson, they don't know and they're not finding out, but I'm just saying Miguel Odell would rock. I think that'd be amazing, but putting them at the table the same. So this is wisdom for me. I want to ask one last question. I want you all to answer it, and that is this. You know, when I look back, especially this being the first Mother's Day for me without my mom, what's the one thing that I think about? All I ever think about is my mom getting me to church to know Jesus. If you'd say, and I'll just go around here, and that is, what's the one thing, the one legacy that you want your kids to say about you? The one thing you're like, I want to leave this for my kids, for my grandkids, for...
Stacy, can we start at that?
Yes, absolutely. I have an answer
Go,
immediately.
Stacy.
Okay, so legacy might not be the right word, but what I want my kids to remember and to do differently than what I did, or have, I feel like I have a unique relationship with all four of my kids, and we talk about the hard things. We talk about things that a lot of people don't talk about with their kids. Things that my mother never talked about with me. We did not talk about any of the bad things that I did when I was their age. That is not the case. I am in their face. I'm in their grill. We talk about things that are, I mean, you can just ask Maddie. I make that kid uncomfortable every 3 days. But I want her to understand that, number one, I'm not stupid. And number two, she needs to, I want all of them to realize that the choices that they make today as young adults impacts them the rest of their life. And I want them to do things better and differently than I did, because I made a lot of bad choices. And so we talk about the very difficult conversations, the stuff that I can talk about maybe with my mom now, but we never had raw and real uncomfortable conversations when I was a teenager.
Love it.
And that is not the case with my kids. So as far as a legacy, I would want them to do the same thing with their children. When they get to a point where they're raising teenagers, I want them to be confident enough to have difficult conversations with their kids, knowing that it's going to make them uncomfortable, because it's not easy for me to talk to my kids about all of the things that the world shows and teaches and things that I did that I don't want them to do. It's difficult, but I want them to have the courage to do the same thing.
So good. Cindy said she found hers.
Well, that was really good. I should have probably gone first. But I think that I hope that my kids, my grandkids, if God blesses me long enough to meet my great-grandchildren, I hope that they always feel loved, no matter what. Ha ha.
Should have gone second.
No matter if I get mad at them and grab my gym bag and walk out of the gym. I don't want to say that happened last week, but it might have. So I don't care if I get mad at them. I don't care if they get mad at me. I want them to know, no matter what choice they make, what they do, where they're at, that I love them unconditionally, no matter what. And I want them to know that they've always got a home to come to and a place to be. And
you
I
keep
want
taking
to know
all my answers.
that Kristen's. No.
That's so good. Kristen?
I was going to say loved and that they have a home, but I want them to know that our home is for their friends too.
Oh yeah,
That's good.
That if they're friends, I don't know why I'm crying.
I do. That's awesome. I love it.
That if their friends need some place to go, our house is open and safe.
So good. Yep. So good. Megan?
And love is obviously the easy answer. I want to lead with love. I want them to see that I served Jesus and that they saw it in my life. Love unconditionally. To kind of say what Cindy said, that if they mess up, we talk about it, we discipline it, and then we move on. And that there's not this distance, because there's not with Jesus. Like, we can go to him when we mess up, and I just want them to know that they can come to me, they're still loved, and that I'm just compassionate and teaching and always there to encourage.
So good. All of these answers are remarkable. And, you know, I think about Cindy yesterday, my Cindy, and she was just like, I can't wait to be around my kids. And all of my kids are in their 20s. And the influence that Cindy has today may be as powerful as it's ever been. And you're always mom. You know, even in my mom's passing, it's still mom. I still think about things. I'm still inspired by things. And I would just say this in closing. That is, there are a few things. Everything that these ladies said is powerfully met by practically, number one, putting some stuff down. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Even as grandma or great-grandma, what do you want to do? What do you want to leave? What do you want to have? And to get there, because I've seen it in their lives. And again, intentionally. Asked these ladies, and I could have asked others that I love and respect and got to pray through and pray with situations. But if this is going to happen, if this piece is going to happen, number one, you've got to forgive. And you've got to forgive regularly. How many of you as moms have ever made a mistake? Raise your hand. Any moms ever made a mistake? Dads, we already know we did. Of course we have. Here's the thing. When you make a mistake and you do it wrong, forgive. No matter what, because you're leaving that legacy. That's taught. That's how they see Jesus. Here's another thing is too, and that is, and I think Stacy said it, and that is declare your status. What's my status? My number one status is I'm walking with Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. And then if I'm blessed to also on top of that, not just be a mom, but be a wife and be a shark mom, a career mom, a stay-at-home mom, I'm going to be the best I can be at that. The next thing is this, praise. Don't curse your kids. Praise them. High-five them. Speak the best about them. Inspire them. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to have opportunities to teach them through that. But encouraging and believing in them and sitting back and praising, that's something these 4 moms do well. That's something that my wife does well. This is something Cindy told me that she thinks will help you build your home. Have no secrets in your home. So practical. Don't have any secrets. Get transparent, especially if you're married. And especially if you're working with kids. That doesn't mean you show them your checking account every day, mom, to your kids. It just means that I'm not holding anything back so I can be successful. Here's the other thing, and they've already said it. Kristen, maybe the most important point, and that is this. Don't hang out with bad company. Don't be a mom that's sitting around moms that are talking about old boyfriends and Facebook relationships and alcohol and partying and the disappointment in their marriage and how they hate life. Get around people that are going to inspire you. And if they're inspiring you, it is because they watch your kids. That's a real friend, by the way. That is a real friend. Also, if they help you move, which I'm not a very good friend, obviously. Can I give you a couple more? And it's already been said. Don't just stay in church, serve it. Here's why. It's a bride. It's a bride. Serve God's church. Guard your thoughts. And lastly, honor your vows if you're married and you're a mother. You have the opportunity to build your house. And it doesn't say the husband or the dad tears it down. Whoa, that's powerful. It's not that dads don't mess up. We know we do. But the fact that moms, you have this level. Ladies, you have this level of influence in what you're creating atmospherically in your home, spiritually, emotionally in your home. God wants to use you. Would you do this? Would you just bow your heads, close your eyes, and just simply, if you're grateful and thankful for your mom, obviously, pray and thank God for them right there. Just thank God for what they mean to you, what they do for you, the inspiration, the biblical calling they have in your life. And then number 2, if you're a mom, just say, I want to apply traits necessary. Because you're still influencing great-grandma, grandma, empty nest mom. If you've never had the influence and opportunity, I should say, to have kids, and you're influencing other kids as a school teacher or nieces, nephews, just say, Lord Jesus, I want these things in my life. I want to be present. I want to be intentional. I want to make sure I've got the right rhythm. I want to make sure that I have the door open. And just pray that. And if you prayed that in a minute with no one looking around, moms, just slip your hand up. Future moms, slip your hand up. I'm going to pray for you. I love that all over the place. Jesus, thank you for moms. Thank you that at the tomb, it was mom. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for the picture found in the book of Corinthians chapter 7. I just think back in 2 Corinthians 7 where it says that we should love like a mom. Love the church like a mom. And I just pray, God, that you would inspire every mom here, lift them up, give them new levels of desire. And I pray all of us that influence our moms and our wives and our daughters, that we would do it at a level like never before. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and amen. Would you do this? Would you celebrate the goodness of God and our moms and everything that he spoke to so many just now? Also, would you keep applauding for these awesome ladies that came up here and vulnerably shared? So powerful.